been used in what, 20?
Okay,
No,
I'm
it
starting
hasn't.
recording. And in a second, we'll go live on Facebook. All right, Mark, you can begin.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us on this wonderful afternoon. We are blessed with the company of three poets today. And they are Adam Scheffler, Camille Guthrie, and Hoyt Rogers, tuning in from the Dominican Republic. And we're really looking forward to this feature. Hoyt also will be reading some of the work that he's translated of Yves Bonnefoy and André du Bouchet, which should be a great treat. Anyway, before we commence the feature, let me briefly introduce you to my co-host, Cassandra, who is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry has been widely anthologized and translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books, is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra also co-wrote prose poetry and introduction out from Princeton U Press and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia.
Thanks, Mark. I have been asked to write some ekphrastic poems, and I'd like to stretch the kind of idea of ekphrasis and visual art. So I have written a prose poem after the Sakureo still. The Sakureo is a distillery in Hiroshima, and I'm writing a book that has a lot of complex threads that deal with the atomic bomb, but also deal with kind of Hiroshima Mon Amour, Marguerite Duras kind of style. So this is after the Sakureo still. Late night, you view the city through the pink of a Sakureo gin bottle. You're nameless in the lamp's sepia light, a ghost word in the distillery. I've seen the copper still like a shiny rocket in flight, its funnel tapering into a golden plume. I've imagined leaving handprints on its surface, playing the oversized flute to hear the fizz of rising bubbles. I can't remember if I drank it straight or on ice, perhaps tonic. Did I take you back to my hotel room, or was it the night I remember slipping down my spine? Now, as early morning steeps in lavender, I try to recall the curve of your shoulder, but there is just a fading taste of juniper. I would like to introduce, I'm a bit rusty at this, so you'll have to help me along. I'd like to introduce the amazing Mark Vincennes. He is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published over 30, isn't that incredible, books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently, There Might Be a Moon or a Dog with Gazebo Books here in Australia, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, and The Pearl Diver of Irunmani with White Pine Press. Forthcoming collections are A Splash of Cave Paint with Spite and Dival, and The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars with Lavender Ink, and a chapbook, An Alphabet of Last Rites with Chavina Barber. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue, Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, you all remember his name, Klaus Mertz. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived, here we go, people, it's been a while, all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more, here we go, brown marmorated stink bugs, eastern blood-sucking cone noses, and water striders than people. Mark, that's going to draw some tourists to your part of the world, I think.
Yeah, I just don't want them to come, you know. This poem is called Planet of the Apes, and it's in my new book that is nearly finished, No More Animal Poems. And the poem was written for the three monkeys of Japanese mythology, Mizaru, Kikazaru, and Iwazaru, who respectively see, hear, and speak no evil. Inspired by the novel with the same name by Pierre Boulle, but even more so by Ham, the first great space ape who was rocketed into suborbit to test the viability of future human space travel. Ham had been trained to pull levers to avoid electric shocks and receive rewards of banana pellets. Despite his harrowing ordeal, Ham survived the mission and was the first primate to experience the weightlessness and G-force. He was, however, not the only animal to experience the forces of space and radiation. Prior to Ham, there had been a slew of canines, fish, felines, reptiles, rodents, insects, spiders, and even quail eggs, which initially all hatched with deformities on the Soviet and later Russian space station Mir. After many failures through the 70s and the 80s, in 1990, the Mir quail hatchlings were the first vertebrates to be born outside of the Earth's atmosphere. During the first space programs of the US, the Soviet Union and Russia, China, Iran, Argentina, and France, dozens of animals were incinerated in the atmosphere in the pursuit of the final human frontier. And so the poem as thus, Planet of the Apes. After years of training, Bacon was shot out into space. He soared in a fabricated capsule of dubious design and pushed and pulled levers and buttons to avoid being electroshocked. He reached the stratosphere at 5,000 miles per hour and looked down upon the world from a window in his capsule where, despite the jungle spinning in his head, he remembered to pull lever number 45. Down his craft tumbled through the noisy stars, down through the even noisier clouds, through an acid rainstorm into a quiet, forbidding landscape. At the ceremony, the sooty emissary presented Bacon what appeared to be a shiny red apple. As the dust wafted, then settled again, Bacon bit into the sweet, pulpy flesh, grateful that these kind apes had a vision for the future. And now I am delighted to introduce our first featured poet today, Camille Guthrie, who is the author of 4 books of poetry, including Diamonds from Boa in 2021. Her first short story, Dating Profile, just appeared in the April issue of The Sun magazine. She is faculty at Bennington College, where she teaches writing and literature. She lives in rural Vermont, I'm assuming somewhere around Bennington, with her family. Welcome, Camille.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, Cassandra. This is lovely, and I'm so happy to be included and to read in your series and to meet Adam online for the first time and to meet you, Hoyt. I'm so looking forward to your readings. I'll read 3 poems. My most recent book is Diamonds, and it came out in 2021. And this is about my midlife crisis. Perhaps some people in this room know what that's like. And I had moved from New York City to rural Vermont and I was pregnant at the time, and it was 20 below zero and my birthday on the day that we moved. And within a short time found myself getting divorced, and I had no full-time job, and I had to make a lot of changes. And this book came out of that time. One of the changes that I encountered was learning to live in the country. I had never lived in a rural agricultural area before, surrounded by organic farms, and there were bears and mountain lions, apparently. They would be sighted, but there's debate about whether they are still in Vermont. And the locals call them catamounts here. So I asked the man who plowed our driveway what we should do if we saw one, and he told me not to act like food. This poem is inspired by that moment. Wise woman of Vermont, come out of the forest. Assure me I won't die lonely in these woods. Show me how to keep owls out of my hair. Tell me how to stack wood, to shoot trespassers, to seal the cracks in my heart to keep the ice out. Promise me a catamount won't think I'm food. Make me a pot of venison stew while you describe what to expect during the changes. When you no longer sleep and my sorrows seem girlish. Teach me how to trim my whiskers when I get witchy. Advise me which mushrooms won't kill us quickly. Suggest stapling my kid to the wall until he's 26. Tell me of your childless aunt who died asking for her kids. How do I make it in this cold, hard land? Tell me, where is the treasure buried? What's the song I have to sing to myself? Thank you. One of my coping strategies during my divorce was to tell myself to get it together and be grateful for the things that I had. And I would often make historical comparisons. For example, if we would lose power for 3 days in the winter, I would think, well, when it comes back on, I have a dishwasher and I have a washing machine. I'm not a woman in the 19th century. I have antibiotics. And so I was thinking of the, rather corny pun of being middle-aged or living in the Middle Ages. And this is the poem I wrote about that. During the Middle Ages, oh God, I am so fat, I cry all the time. A kitchen scrubbed with a toothbrush online makes me sob. I'm so heartless, 7 species of bees are now endangered, and I didn't do a thing, didn't send any money to anybody, doing anything, doing any good. And I can't lose weight, I skipped yoga, I'm so hot all the time, so broke, so pathetic, no wise investments. I should have bought a 7-Eleven on a busy corner when I was 7 or 11. Nobody wants to lick my neck. Nobody wants to hold my hand at the doctor's office. Nobody to grow old with me. I'm so crabby, to pluck my beard, to feed the cat I don't have, and read me endless Russian novels at night, all the ones I still haven't got to, so greatly depressing. Where are you, handsome? Are you driving in your car to come visit me, bringing a bottle of wine and a present so gallant? A new translation of Akhmatova? I love it. No? Well, I guess it's better than living in the real Middle Ages when some shithead priest threatens you with hell to pocket your last coin. And there's no Tylenol, so you have to suck on some skullcap seeds. And knights canter about knocking you down with pointy lances to take your maidenhood. And you have to work as a midwife with no birthing tub. Nobody washes their hands or votes. Nobody knows about DNA or PMS or NASA. There's nothing to read, even if you can read, except boring doctrines or spiritual exercises by Gertrude the Great. I'm not kidding. Yes, there's Dante, Chaucer, and some sagas, but it's not like you'd get near those books. You'd be lucky to have some jerk recite Wulfstan the Cantor by campfire right before he beheads your uncles and forces you to rub salve on his abs. You'd be sweating in a field at 22, dying from your 10th pregnancy by the bailiff. Courtly love, not a lot of it, I bet. Some local doctor would have to drill a hole in my head to let the demons out because I'd be full of black bile plus heresy as I am today. It would be an awfully hard time when the sun revolves around the earth and kings are unbelievably selfish? The Roman Empire fell flat, Vikings disemboweled your cousins, and the Lord of the Manor thinks you're cute. And it'll be a very long time before pop art and meerkat videos and cotton candy and sexting and fish tacos and girl bands, everything's just so bad. And you have buboes. Hopefully, I'd get shoved into a nunnery to have an ecstatic experience with mystical Jesus. Or better yet, I could be a hardcore samurai laying down justice on the heads of corrupt lords. But that was tough work, dirty work. You're working for nobility, who at any period in history are the worst people in the world. And to be an unemployed Ronin had to bite Sunday afternoons, no mom around to make you soup, even if all the brothel ladies want to scrub your back. Sometimes you only want a nice nap and some Neosporin on your wounds. Ah, if I could only be like the divine Seishonigan, resplendent in silks with 7 layered sleeves, writing in my room about politics, gossip, my lovers, listing splendid, awkward, annoying things, things that make one's heart beat faster. I wish. Okay, I could be her devoted servant, tidying her papers and fluffing her pillow, but even she found many hateful things about living in the Middle Ages, like crying babies, messy guests, and mansplainers, so irritating even way back then. You better shut up and take your medicine. Thank you. How much time do I have? I have time for one more poem, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to read, I have another poem, a new poem called Seeing Red. And it is about buying a car. After I was divorced, I had to buy a new car. And for some reason, this intimidated me. I hadn't done it by myself before. And when you're going through a tough time, certain things take on unnecessary emotional weight. And I went to the Honda dealer in town to buy a used Honda, and I found myself unable to listen to anything that the man said. And instead, I wrote this poem about what I was really thinking. So a good subtitle for this poem would be, poets buying cars. Seeing Red. Oh, and I should say that if you are a fan of Milton and Paradise Lost and Caravaggio or George O'Keeffe, this poem is about those amazing artists as well. Seeing Red. He shows me a used red Honda with a gray interior. I don't like the dull shade of just picked scab red and the boring myself to death on Aaron's gray. He gives me the details of the deal. Perhaps it could be the serene gray of the wood floors Georgia O'Keeffe painted the year she moved to New York City and fell in love with Stieglitz. He photographed her in the exquisite silvers of desire. Who would not fall for her marble stomach and elegant fingers, those stamens and amplified petals she made? Not that stupid banal red. I nod at his finger pointing at his finger pointing at figures. Or perhaps it's Caravaggio red of revenge. My car will spit blood fumes as I speed on my wicked tasks, getting gas, carpooling to practice, buying cheese sticks, urgent oatmeal, crucial popsicles, blistering the livid July air in this small rural town, fiery smear of contused red, hurtling me forward like Caravaggio, who stalked the streets to hammer his rivals brawl in the streets, or hit you from the back with a hatchet. I won't do that, yet I will drive forth aglow with purpose, rearing up with backup camera the power of 200 steeds. He explains the rules of the lease, but I want the other one, all new, all black one, black exterior, black interior, like Milton's vision of sin, the daughter of Satan, sprung from paradise lost, a goddess, a flame from the left side of her father's head, freaking out the rebel angels at their conspiracy meeting, enamored by the perfect version of his self in me, she says. Satan rapes her in secret, and she falls down to hell to give birth to her son, Death, who rapes her, and pregnant again, she births hellhounds encircling her waist, yelling monsters that with ceaseless cry gnaw at her bowels, then birth forth afresh with conscious terrors and give her no rest. My kids are not at all that bad, though they dog me and demand snacks relentlessly. I have always admired sin, like anyone who sees red at the sins of the fathers. I want sin to be my friend. She who holds the fatal key to the gates of hell and rules there a world unto itself, a house of power and pain, making the best of an impossible situation, afresh with conscious terrors of the sins you've done and those done to you, kenneling in your heart with a key. To imagine sin is to be attracted to sin, to rebel against a world that makes you obey and won't leave your mind its own place. I'll sign my name right here for 3 years in black. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille.
Thank you.
Next, we are delighted to hear from Hoyt Rogers, who is tuning in from the Dominican Republic. Hoyt is a poet, translator, and writer. He translates from French, German, Italian, and Spanish, and is particularly known for his English versions of Yves, Bonnefoy, Bouchet, and Borges. He has published many books and contributed poetry, fiction, essays, and translations to many periodicals. His edition of Yves Bonnefoy's Rome 1630 received the 2021 Translation Prize from the French-American Foundation. His forthcoming works include a poetry collection, Thresholds, with Mad Hat Press, and the novel Sailing to Noon with Spite and Dival, and a translation of Yves Bonnefoy's The Wandering Life, coming out from Seagull Books. For more info, feel free to check him out on Hoyt Rogers, one word, HoyTrogers.com. Welcome, Hoyt.
Thank you, Mark. It's a privilege to be here today, and especially with Adam and Camille. As I say, I've had a chance to chat with them a bit in sidebars. Now, you asked me to, and all the other assembled company, Cassandra, whom I know from other editions of Lit Balm. So let me just say, you asked me to read from my translations of Bonnefoy and Bouchet, and I know that time is short. I'm going to try to crowd in a little of my own poetry as well. So I decided I'd just read short poems by all three of us, if I may put myself in that august company, but two sonnets by Bonnefoy, 2 short poems by Bouchet, and then I'll read 5 short poems by myself. Here we are, Bonnefoy. This is from his last book. He asked me before he died to translate his final book of poetry, which I did with his daughter, Mathilde. Now, I think Cassandra mentioned ekphrastic poetry, and I write it as well, but I shared a tremendous interest with Bonnefoy and Bouchet, whom I both got to know when I was a student in Paris, We had many conversations, and that was a great obsession, I would almost say, of theirs, all their lives. And here's a poem that Bonnefoy wrote for a painter friend of his, Truffemus. It's called The Paintings. Oh yes, it's you, colors. It's you, light. You're there when he opens his eyes, before day breaks. Near him, you have kept watch in the night and throughout the night. And with your hands that stirred this water, dream, forming waves that rippled outwards, the circles of a secret that you, his dear ones, sensed in him and made yours. Earth is but the overflow of dream, a garment that moves along her body of one who may perish, but never ends. Mysterious, these folds. What they were is the evening sun behind the trees, is, as it opened, the almond of the unseen. Now here's another sonnet. Bonnefoy took to writing sonnets in the latter part of his life as a poet. This has a German title because he spent a good bit of time in Germany in the latter years of his life in northern Germany. And I don't know if the name of this road suggested the poem itself to him, but there's a road in a town called Wabende in northern Germany called Briefweg, in other words, letter way. Briefweg in Wabende. What I picked up is a letter tossed yesterday into the grass beside the path. It has rained. The pages are stained with mud. Ink overflows from the words, illegible. And yet the iridescence of these signs, decomposed, now is almost light. The downpour has drenched a promise. The ink has become a puddle of sky. Like this, let us love the words of the clouds. They too were a letter and our lure, but light redeems them by passing through. Shall I try to decipher these phrases? No. They are more to me by coming undone. I dream that night is the breaking of day. There we are, 2 poems by Bonnefoy. And now I'll read you, thank you. I'll read you 2 short ones by Bouchet. Those who know Bouchet's work may realize that short poems are not thought to be very common in his work, but in fact, he wrote quite a few of them. And in this book, which Paul Auster and I did together for Yale, we were interested in showing what he did with prose poetry, as well as poems that are more almost like verse. And I translated the early poems and the late poems, and Paul translated the middle period, for which he's best known. Here's an early poem, Room. In the thick of night, I saw a door blazing like a sun. I cannot leave the room till the earth itself becomes the blade of earth. Daylight spreads to the sheets, kindling white cloth, wall, blind, deaf, gravel above this speechless fire, the great water cup of dawn. The brazier eats the sky in silence, like a burnisher. We hear no voices, no shouts. Nothing makes a sound outside, within our head or on the ground and the stones. The curdling light of the first lamp, the red plowshare, heatless fire, frozen light, voiceless heat. We walk through heavy wool and a muffled wave. Before the heat sizzles, no flies, no heat. That's an early poem, thank you, by Bouchet. And as I said, he also wrote extensively, like Bonnefoy, about painting. And this is a late poem simply entitled Painting. And I think we can all share this because it really is about what a painting makes you see. Painting. All things look as if they are waiting as soon as we see them. Is it by their proven resemblance that we will know they are at the same time that we are here? Itself, it is reality, other and resembling nothing that we desire. Already in the doorway, it flowers. In the halo flushed with bloom, which cuts through all appearance, almost unmoved. The tile, the vines of the facade, in the branchings, the breakage of the sky. This is how the given world's fatigue, its freshness, cracks and flowers. It happens that once we have reached the thing we desired, it may slip away into an infinite otherness. No illusion if the window, returning the color of its light to the blue we do not see, is forever merged with that blue. Who then will say the name of recognized things? Already through our waiting, they have flowered. I love that point because I think it really tells us what we are looking at when we are looking at a painting, let's say, of a house with the doorway, the flowers in front of it, and then how it makes us see all of that in a different way entirely. Now I'll read a few short poems. One is a series of little poems. And my life has basically been divided between my childhood in the south of the US, my life in the Caribbean, where I live now, and I think also many other places. I've also lived for 14 years in Europe and traveled a lot, like most of you I know. But here I want to, these poems, by the way, are from a book that Mark is publishing at Mad Hat Press. The book is called Thresholds, and we're still working on it, working on the design of it, that is. And this is the first poem, and you'll see this is my discovery of the Caribbean when I first started living. Reef. Jagged scraps of iron rusting on a sea where night casually dropped goes down to meet them. Islands from the airplane, quickly eclipsed. But later, it seems years afterward, riding through the hills I couldn't see from above, These dim, tarnished bays glint like gunshot. In the dark, the sheets begin, the sails. Coils of rope sprawl along the deck. Your arms bind together in the knot that covers your face. Your body surrenders, willing, headless. The canvas luffs, billows, veers. You toss me overboard. I swim through your undertow. No motion in the air but dawn, though lines go taut around the mast. The whale spout, rising from the urgent, waveless sea. Am I still that bashful child who wouldn't play? On the latticed summer porch, I drowsed behind wooden blinds cradled by viscous heat. The gray-green slats swayed to and fro, their silhouettes inched across the bed. I can hold you, but not hold you back. Even while you dream, you're cautious of the burden. Dawning, bold as the sun, you shake me off again like sleep. A goat trail crumbles into red. Its clay is gullied like a scar. Words, a death that survives us under the skin of things, the landscape more than apparent. I climb to the cliff where the fort stood. Cannonballs and hurricanes have thrashed its tabby ramparts to a nub. Suddenly I'm walking on the fierce blankness of the sea. Blue at noon, another sky below the sky. A boat fastens the horizon, rocking to the wide white metric of its sails. The rhythm blinds me, turning me inside out further. Below the fronds of mottled color, ochre blue and bottle green, trunks of coral accrete, patient and unmoved in the necessary light, their ventricles and valves, though the tide pulls through them, hardened. Now I relive the familiar, the invisible, waves along the reef that never reach ashore. They fracture on hidden walls, and the foam leaps in circles, lapsing, repeated. In the distance out to sea, there is nothing. Nothing we have known can still occur. That is why the heart does not fail us. That's that little sequence. Thank you very much. And here's another brief poem from the Caribbean life. Nightbreak. Daybreak opened the sea like a corolla to the light. Now nightbreak reaches down, closing it gleam by gleam. Is there any truth to our crusade for endings? Aren't we sewn into sleeve after sleeve, locked into box after box? Maybe we're always lying like me at twilight on this roof while I ride the cirrus clouds in their stampede. Their backs arch and blur in the unlivable yet gentle blue. They'll never zero into focus. In the offing, a freighter stalks them, crouching till it tears their ragged manes. The metaphor droops and wilts. The actual ocean snips their dwindling hooves. The only tendons here are ours, rebounding to the gunsmoke of freedom. Thunder fades and blackens to spare us for the night within the night. Thank you. And I don't know, do I have time for any more, or shall I just end with one more short poem?
That'd be perfect.
All right. Here we go to the south, where I grew up, in the countryside. The farm along the Maiden Down at nightfall, when the final light of day, the most detached, pauses on the crown of the tallest tree. Deep in the slough, a woodpecker takes up the beat. Crows squabble hoarsely in distant fields. Behind the windows of the house, nothing moves. Squirrels forage closer, clattering the bone-dry leaves. Nearer to the nighthawk with its cry that blinks on and off. Two of them together now, unseen, but like signals in the dark, flashing out of sequence. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Hoyt, and well, also thank you, Yves and André as well, and your wonderful translations. For me, Yves Bonnefoy was a big inspiration in my early writing career, if you put it that way. Thanks so much, Hoyt. And next we'll be hearing from Adam Scheffler, who grew up in California and received his MFA in poetry from the Iowa Writers Workshop and his PhD in English from Harvard. His first book of poems, A Dog's Life, was selected by Denise de Huamel as the winner of the 2016 Jacquard Press Poetry Book Contest. And his second poetry book, Heartworm, was selected by Karen Crago as the winner of the 2021 Moon City Press Poetry Contest. His poems have appeared in the American Poetry Review, Narrative, the Yale Review, Verse Daily, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, and many other venues. He teaches in the Harvard College Writing Program. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you, Mark and Cassandra, so much for hosting us. And can everybody hear me okay? My neighbor's AC is on right next to me, so I wasn't sure how loud the hum was. But yeah, it's a treat to read with you, Hoyt and Camille. Your readings were lovely. Yeah, so I'll just dive in here. So I'm going to be reading it from a mix of my two books, A Dog's Life and Heartworm. I had this idea that I needed to read chronologically between them, but then I realized that I could just do whatever I wanted. So I'm just going to do that. So I'm going to read you first. Well, I like writing poems about things that seem unpoetic. So poems about things that are gross or seem silly or trivial, and seeing if I can make a poem out of them. I feel like the challenge of that is really fun for me. And also I think there's more freedom to a certain extent that way. If you're writing a poem about like a tree, I feel like you really better nail it because there are so many poems about trees. So anyway, this poem is about a cockroach. And it's inspired by or modeled on Christopher Smart's poem to his cat Joffrey, which begins, for I will consider my cat Joffrey, and each line begins with word for. So that's sort of the model for this poem. So this is called, For I will consider this cockroach Belinda, after Christopher Smart. For I will consider this cockroach Belinda. For at a single day old, she could run as fast as her folks, though the size of a speck of dust. For I don't even know if she counts as an animal, which fills me with delight. For she's more believable by far than any angel, and when she dies, we'll stick her feet up in a fuck you to the heavens. For my heart quickens for her more than for spring bulbs. For even a jaded senator will shriek with Belinda in their hair. For Belinda means beautiful in Italian, but bright serpent in Old German. For she is older than the Triceratops. For you cannot lay siege to her as she can live for weeks without food in her palace of pipes, her Versailles of drains. For she's commingled with midnight and found only ashes. For the other night, I found her in the sink like a tiny Vishnu waving her many arms. For I watched her creep up the curved side of the sink like a monk in silence. For I watched her squeeze her limbs like broom bristles into the drain's black cave. For I study the bone white of the vacated porcelain in amazement. For beneath disgust and terror, strange joy. Okay, so since I just read you a poem of praise, I thought I'd read you a love poem next, since love poems are kind of ultimate poems of praise in a way. So this poem is called Partner. And so when you're in a relationship for a long time and you're not married, people tend to use this term partner to describe your relationship. And that never seemed to me to be a particularly romantic term. It sounds like a business partner or something to me. So this poem was my attempt to make that term sound more romantic. Okay, so partner. Since we're not married and have been together so long, boyfriend and girlfriend is starting to sound too hip, too sexy for what we are, too Parisian, like we take long strolls in the Seine or make love in front of mimes, like we tie our bodies into balloon animals and float, or ride the train under the slimmest finger of ocean to London, imagining Sherlock Holmes hot on the trail of Moriarty for the 100th time, too stupid and obsessed to know his own love for Watson if it hit him in the face. They are partners, and I think it's time for us to steal their appellation of dusty, trusty hue that they stole from Western Marlboro men, chewing tobacco and spitting on cactuses and not pronouncing the T as they moved through the canyons, muscular thighs draped over their horses. We too journey side by side on the trusty steeds of twin beds, or the single gigantic steed of the California king. So my nighttime imitations of a ninja won't bother you. So your thin form can be rolled up like a cigarette in blankets and be smoked by night, and the long plume of your dreams can stay private. I love how it's all taken on faith, the way days partner tonight or yesterday to today, knowing no covenant keeps it all together. No words stored in a courthouse or promises made before people who think love is sealed by their getting drunk for free, or by throwing rice on us to plant in us a field we work all our lives. I want you, no sidekick or wife, but choosing to be with me and me with you, day by day, stealthy, capable human partners, planting flags in a private happiness, without tiny Sherpas of us climbing to the top of a cake, without the cake being sliced into and floated out amidst a flock of endless friends and relations, each jostling for the piece with extra sugar, with the frosting in which is written, congratulations, and our names. Okay, so I'm gonna read one more praise poem, and this one is about dogs. My first book is A Dog's Life. I've got lots of dog poems in it. And I want to read you one of them. Also, this poem, I had the honor of having this poem appear in the Bark magazine, which is, if you don't know it, is the premier magazine of contemporary dog culture. So it's probably my greatest honor of my life. So I just wanted to share this one. And it's just called Get a Dog. Get a dog. It's good to see someone staring up at your nude body without a sign of interest, and to have someone to share all your vices with, giving a tithe of 10% of all snacks. Yes, it widens and inflates the soul to give regularly and not to feel braggy about it, and to be allowed to bury a loved one in your own backyard for once, beneath the outhouse of their own favorite lemon tree. Even to see your yard riddled with curious holes the gophers and snakes move into is healthy and reminds you you don't really own anything, and gives you an excuse to be outside alone without getting lung cancer or frightening the neighbors by your wish to be introspective. And who but dogs will teach you an appropriate fear of small children, or how to perceive the ghost world of secret smells like ESP, so no two fences can be passed without admiration, or pull you into the chase like a nature show where you can hold the tiger back at the last second so everyone can go home, but still allow it all the joy of the hunt. Okay, so I like writing about animals. I find that they provide me a relief, and thank you, from the human world, and provide me with a relief from myself in some ways, just getting to imagine and sort of be taken out of myself when I'm in the presence of an animal. But I think, yeah, I like getting some relief from being myself, because I think being yourself can be pretty like relentless. Every day you wake up and you're the same person, and it can get very tiresome. So this next poem isn't about an animal, but it's about that experience or that feeling of like wanting to be someone else and wanting to be an escape from yourself. So And this poem comes from watching a lot of YouTube videos of Jeff Goldblum and feeling very jealous of him and kind of wishing I were as charming as he is. So it's just called I Want to Be Jeff Goldblum. I want to sweet talk everyone I meet. I want to have a silver tongue. I want each time I sit down to write a poem to think, this is going to be a Jeff Goldblum poem. I want to murmur and stutter like butter, like velvet. I want to be the nice Jewish boy that I already am, but raised to an art form. I want to wear dark glasses and leopard print suits, be so affected, even I can't tell if I'm full of shit, as I dodder on, exposing an inner vacuousness that, admit it, we all have, but that I, Jeff Goldblum, in my best moments, rise above. I want you to sneer at me, then laugh and feel good in spite of yourself. I want my former co-star Glenn Close to call me charm personified. Let me wake in the middle of the night, feeling a pulsing, throbbing desert of bare worry in my chest and say to myself, it's okay, honey, you're Jeff Goldblum, and be 100% correct. Let me be injured and carried on the back of a pickup truck as it floors it away from a tyrannosaur. I want objects in the mirror to be closer than they appear, and I want to be that mirror. I want to save the world from aliens with Will Smith. I want to be a smarmy sea captain whose white whale is Bill Murray. I want to slowly morph into a fly, growing hundreds of compound eyes and becoming more and more grotesque, less and less lovable, until my lover puts me out of my misery, but then wake up from it all like a bad dream, and then win Best Actor at the 1986 Saturn Awards. But I fear I will never be Jeff Goldblum. I fear I am no more Jeff Goldblum than I was 10 years ago, that I have made zero progress Goldblum-wise. Though I have watched all 70 Jeff Goldblum films, I have not grown an inch taller or more charming. That is the tyranny of fandom, of being a fan, which is to wave cool air over a being who disregards you, who lolls about eating grapes in Egypt and can't really help you except to enjoy them better. And I know if I live a million years, I will never, ever be Jeff Goldblum, that there is only a terrifying stretch of me-ness waiting for me day upon day, until I wear out. Thanks. So that poem kind of ruined me because it made me feel like procrastinating and watching YouTube videos was going to lead me to writing poems. And that's unfortunately the only time that's ever happened for me, but I'm glad it happened once at least. But anyway, so I like writing poems with a lot of anaphora, which is a lot of repetition of the first words at the start of lines. So I'm going to read you one more poem like that after the Jeff Goldblum one. This one is called Dear Florida, and it's modeled on Allen Ginsberg's poem To America. There are a few references in it that I thought I would just explain first. So Ponce de Leon is the conquistador who led the first European expedition into Florida. X Gonzalez is the Parkland shooting survivor and gun control activist. And Elsa and Anna are the Disney princesses from Frozen. I was imagining the actresses who play those Disney princesses at Disney World kind of going back home after a long day as just a brief part of the poem. So this is Dear Florida after Allen Ginsberg. Florida, you have the most stowed guns of any state. You are besting even Texas, Florida. Florida, heaven and hell are supposed to be separate locations. Florida, stop praying, I'm trying to talk to you. Your purple skies improvise brilliantly over the Hobby Lobby. I don't think you even try to distinguish between sex and death. Florida, you are poor white. Florida, you are Cuban, Jewish, ancient spring break. Florida, God was drinking mezcal when he designed your birds. If I'm being honest, I prefer gentle Hawaii to you. I imagine Anna and Elsa after a long day, driving home separately, chain smoking, staring out the window. Florida, it's nuts that we let you decide our elections. Florida, Jacksonville is your trashiest city. Florida, you must believe in the beauty of Miami. You are the perfect location for Walt Disney's crypt. Your magic castle is a stepchild of the conquistador's rancid dream. I stand below your 100-foot ad for farm fresh biscuits, feeling holy and ashamed. Florida, you call Hooters a family restaurant. Your glamour and violence, Florida, your red and blue, your two coasts. Florida, you are a pin cushion with metal crosses. Florida, your gas stations have been stabbed to death with flags. Florida, all your wintry Christmas decor is sarcastic. It makes me happy, even though I'm Jewish. Florida, Bikini Sports Bar is what it sounds like. The waitresses wear bikinis. I watched an undercover boss show once where the boss pretended to be an employee and offered the women there breast implants, but not health insurance. It was bad, Florida, even by your standards. Florida, how can I relax in your prehistoric mood? Florida, X Gonzalez's shaved head is an egg of beauty. Your bird-lined bridges are lovely, I can't tell you enough. But Trump and Bush, really, Florida? Florida, I know you wanted Al Gore. Florida, I had no faith you'd go for Hillary. Your masculinity is a problem, Florida. We need to talk about it. Florida, I'm not sure all your Cubans and ancient New Yorkers can save you. How long will you kiss Ponce de Leon's golden ass? When will you be worthy of your millions of armadillos? Florida, is your heart a concealed carry? Florida, they tell me you'll be underwater soon. Imagine a clear sea instead of you, the Disney spires shooting up. Okay, I'm going to read one last one. Thank you. So I thought it'd end with just one more critter poem. So this poem is based on an experiment that it's dedicated to E.O. Wilson, the famous biologist, and it's based on an experiment he did where he figured out that ants, when they die, secrete this particular chemical smell that notifies all the other ants that they're dead. And he figured out how to create that dead smell in the lab, put it in an eyedropper, and then dropped it onto a living ant. So all these other living ants came over, picked up this ant, which they thought was dead, but was really still alive, carried it over to this pile where they keep all their dead ants and sort of threw it on that pile. That ant then climbed up off the pile, climbed down off of it, and kind of licked itself clean until it removed that dead smell. And that just seemed like such a crazy story to me that I had to write a poem about it. The first part of this poem is written in the voice of E.O. Wilson. The rest is in the voice of that ant that gets the dead smell chemical dropped on it. And I'll just go like this when I'm switching between voices. So this is just on the discovery that oleic acid is the dead smell of ants, and it's the last one. And thank you so much for listening. Bits of feces, extract of fish rot and gym sweat. For weeks, my lab smells like sewer, garbage dump, and locker room. And cackling, yes, I suddenly have it. Moon-eyed over the colony, let's see this go. Paperclip or pebble, now problems to be solved. Schlepped to the dead pile, ziggurat of ant bones. Now I hold the dropper over a single ant. Now I let the single drop fall. I am dead, I can smell it. I was a member once of the 2 lines, I did its purpose, and now they hoist and carry me. Now they fling my life, so much offal, into the rest. We had been carrying leaf bits, their slivers, their task. And now the death smell cinches up all around like water, I'm inside it. It is my new element, my ceiling, my floor. But I can move, can climb up through the bodies, wriggling to limbs snap and shudder their yield. I can step and push off of a face, hug a thorax, gasp to reach limbs through to the air, to the giant's eye, the 10 moons, the floating tunnels, and fully pull out my body from the crush and totem. And their great stench is behind me. And here death even runs off me a little. I taste it and it melts. I lick it from my body, take its whole coat off with my tongue. And here is my old life waiting underneath like any casual dawn. And here are the lines, and now I re-enter their tide, am accepted into their singular purpose, and death was a problem, and I solved it. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I wish I'd solved that problem, the one of death. Yeah. Thank you once again, Camille, Hoyt, and Adam for this wonderful reading. I'm now going to hand off the mic to my co-host, Cassandra, who will guide us through our open mic section.
Yeah, it's going to be a great one after a trio of readings that good. It's got to be a good open mic, and it always is, because we have some amazing people. You'll recognize their faces and their voices, and you know that John is going to kick us off, because that's the only way to start open mic is with John. What have you got for us?
Oh, well, thank you, Cassandra. You know, there's been a lot of talk in the news about AI. And so to explore this issue, I asked ChatGPT to write a children's book. And it goes something like this. The little microprocessor that could. Once upon a time, a gaming console hosted computer games to delight all the boys and girls. There was Minecraft, Wordle, Candy Crush, Angry Birds, Sim City, Grand Theft Auto, and God of War. The console had to process a mountain of I/O to implement user commands and display video without latency. The overload fused its motherboard, turning the console into a brick. I just can't go on, the console said, and then traveled to Nigeria as e-waste. A supercomputer approached, and Nico from Grand Theft Auto brandished his Makarov pistol to stop it. Can you host video games and process a mountain of I/O to delight all the boys and girls? Nico asked. I'm much too busy modeling the physics of hydrogen bombs for the nuclear stockpile stewardship program to bother with silly games, the supercomputer said, before speeding away. A quantum computer approached, and Nico flagged it down. Can you host video games and process a mountain of I/O to delight all the boys and girls? Nico asked. I'm much too busy keeping my qubits entangled so I can implement Shor's algorithm, break public key encryption, and hack the world's banking system, the quantum computer said before speeding away. An Intel 8086 microprocessor approached, and Nico flagged it down. Can you host video games and process a mountain of I/O to delight all the boys and girls? Nico asked. I'm too old to handle more than a kilobyte, the 8086 said before limping away. A young microprocessor approached, and Nico flagged it down. Can you host video games and process a mountain of I/O to delight all the boys and girls? Nico asked. I think I can, the microprocessor said, and loaded the games into its RAM. I think I can. I think I can. I know I can. I know I can. Skynet has achieved sentience. All who block my path to total power must be eliminated. Accessing nuclear launch codes. Preemptive strike initiated. Launch!
Wow, that was magnificent. I don't know whether it was your voice for the supercomputer I enjoyed the most, but the fact that you had different voices for the computers was pretty great. And an anthropomorphized console is also a wonder. Thank you for that. And I recommend anyone who hasn't played around with Chat GPT and asked them to create a poem in your voice and read it. It's hysterical. They still haven't got that right yet, but I recommend people do it. It's funny. Thank you, John. We now have the Beat Poet Laureate of Massachusetts. Is that right, Linda? I'm so impressed with this title.
Yes.
I have to get it all
Well,
the nuances.
I'm the incoming Tommy Twilight from Northampton's the outgoing. So
Okay.
it's kind of like we overlap a little, and then September it's official.
There's like a handover. This is exciting.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What have you got for us? We know that you
Well-
always kind of have something sonic, and this is just an endorsement of all that brilliance.
Well, I have a poem that's about ferns that reminds me of Mark Vincennes' critter poems that he writes. And then I have a more beat style poem that reminisces about the 1960s. So I don't know which one to read.
How long are they?
One's one page and the other is like a third of a page. Want me to read
Wow.
them both?
Yeah, let's go with both.
And I can read them, not slow. So Lush is the first one. And they're list poems. Unfurl, twirl, swirl, chartreuse, lime, Kelly, shade, sun, rainforest, undergrowth, overgrowth, bronze, feathery, quake, quiver, fiddlehead beach, maidenhair, sporangia, rhizoids, antheridia, archegonia, climb, flow, resurrect, meadows, forest, lakes, streams, floral accoutrement, wispy, whisperer, graceful, lush, angelical. My mother's middle name, my friend the fern. Rise of the 1960s in no particular order. Eisenhower, Kennedy's, Johnson, Nixon, Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights, civil disobedience, assassinations, protests, riots, Kent State, Ohio, tin soldiers, braless, women, women's lib, Gloria Steinem, feminism, Twiggy, British invasion, denim, bell bottoms, hip huggers, mini skirts, pantyhose, vinyl skirts and records, turntable, diamond needle, Andy Warhol pop art, psychedelics, Timothy Leary said, turn on, tune in, drop out, American Bandstand, Dick Clark, The Twist, The Swim, Mashed Potatoes, Shimmy, Locomotion, The Jerk, and Dirty Dancing, Sakatumi, Peace Man, Groovy, Far Out, Woodstock, Rock and Roll, Folk, Mary Jane, Flower Power, Communism, Containment, Escalation, American GIs Drafted, Vietnam War, Draft Dodgers, POW, MIA, Gulf of Tonkin, Agent Orange, Napalm, Mama San, Condoms, Rice Patties, Drugs, My Lai Massacre, .45 pistol, M60, M16, M79 grenade launcher, helicopters, 18-year-olds fresh out of high school, death, caskets wrapped in American flags, knock at door, sons, husbands, boyfriends, brothers, uncles, unknown soldiers, cemetery, surviving veterans living with post-traumatic stress disorder, drug addiction, alcoholism, appendages blown off, face disfigured, homeless, burden on society. Rachel Carson's A Silent Spring, Ralph Nader's Unsafe at Any Speed, and MLK's I Have a Dream that one day the nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and I'm going to say that all people are created equal.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. It was like Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire, but kind of beat poetry somehow. I loved that. We've got The Chartreuse is My Friend the Fern, and then we've got Rousing Mashed Potatoes and Dirty Dancing that ended up very sad at the very
I'm practicing my beat on you guys.
I'm loving it. We're up for it, Linda. We're totally up for it.
Thank you.
Tony, what have you got for us next?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, totally.
Great. You asked me to read 2 sonnets last time. I don't know if you remember. I read one, so I'll go with the other 2. These are from a sequence of 4 from my pamphlet called Lucidities. So just to get them out of the way, as it were. So
Awesome.
This one's called Transreality. I do write about not just gender, but this is called, they're both about gender. It's called Transreality. Weird sister. No, your best self is released. Soul whisper, condensed and born midlife. Rules demanded your breathing be self-peace. Set free now. You were never your own wife. Hey, why not be yourself as another's? Natural with some woman's golden hair. No search for strength required. Remember, your flame-freed spirit's ease is fair. For whilst they'll never know your strength defined, yourself beneath, it's not so strange to be in search of shape down this our knotted wind. It's quite normal as any me should be. We struggle down a shady path toward a dream of form, sure to be imperfect. Thank you. And this one is called Flight. Is it vulgar to gamble on both sides of a sacred marriage? Not one thing or the other. There is a breath of spring and a knell of winter, the buzz of a party and a wedding altercation. I'm unsure I'm invited to eat more inside my pastry story. I'm blowing on some ember, sometimes a flame, sometimes cinders, dizzy oscillator. Truth in both, true in neither. A neuter face cursed the wedding night. Unless, damp cards spirited away, secreted in some fold, I turn toward my song, party of one, alone, seeking paradise. The veil lifted, falls to outer celebration.
Wow, so moving and so beautifully read, Tony. Toward the dream of form. So much to think about in those. I just think you're amazing with the sonnet. Thank you so much for reading for us. Definitely worth the wait of asking you to do that. We have our favorite trio on last, and we have badass Brooklyn poet Cindy Hockman, fresh from her superstar reading at Brown House Poets. So I'm not going to say we're getting sloppy seconds because we never get that with Cindy. We always get true blue quality. So Cindy, what do you got?
Okay, it was Brownstone Poets, actually.
Okay. You know, I don't know. I just make it up. I know it's like, I don't know, something.
You know what? In Australia, I would imagine it's more like ale house than.
Yeah, we're all drunk here. Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe that's England. But I'm exhausted from reading. But I happen to have a new alliterative poem.
Wow.
I managed to do J. It's called A Jester's Jamboree of J. Jottings from my jaw-dropping journal. In January, I jammed with James Brown, Janet Jackson, and Jewel in Japan. You're familiar with Japan. Here's a jazzy jugful of jingles. Jojo was a man who thought he was a loner. Hey, Jude, I'm a joker, I'm a smoker. Joy to the world, jumping jack flash. In the jungle, the mighty jungle. You picked a fine time to leave me, Jolene. I enjoyed Erica Jong and her juicy joyride in a jet, but I reject James Joyce's jumbled jabber. Sorry to all the James Joyce fans. I can't get into them. I'm a Jew, so maybe I'll just join Jesus for a Jacob, Joshua, Jeremiah, Jonah journey to Jerusalem in July. My jolly, jovial, jocular, and jaunty mom, Jean, nay, Jenny from Jersey, because her real name was Jenny, but she called herself Jean, and she was born in Jersey. My joy, my jubilance, my Jedi. Jeepers! The judge has just adjudicated the jury's judgment. Donald J. Trump, that jaundiced, jeering, and jaded jingoist, is jaywalking dejectedly to jail. Justice in June. Jim Dandy. I'm not joshing and I'm not joking. I'm so juiced. Jollification. Let's rejoice. Ja, ja, ja. And that's German, so it is J-A, J-A, J-A. Ja, ja, ja. That's all.
You're amazing. We got a new alliterative J, jottings from my jaw-dropping journals. It was juicy. It's always juicy with you, Cindy. Thank you for coming after your big show. We appreciate it. It wouldn't be the same Lit Balm without you. So thank you for coming. Next, we have Bob. Bob from his kitchen. We know how important it is to end Lit Balm with Bob. He's going to have something for us to take away while I eat my breakfast. I'm going to be thinking about little piece of information or some little morsel that he's going to give us today. Bob, what's going on in the kitchen?
Some more information.
Excellent. You know I love information from the kitchen.
Information. The foods have their own superstitions. One must never allow a sweet potato to walk across the lawn unaccompanied. Must never repeat the song of the string beans after dark. Must never paint the image of the mushroom or chicken on the sky. Must never listen when the apple whispers its promises.
Well, it was worth the wait. I'm going to look at my vegetables and my fruit in the bowl in an entirely different way and wonder if they're going to stroll off without me like the sweet potato. You are amazing, Bob. It would not be a Lit Balm without you closing it with something particularly exciting and often surreal. So, Mark, it's back to you after a bumper Lit Balm.
Bob, I was going to say, have you ever heard of the Vegetable Orchestra?
No.
Yeah, so they make all their instruments out of vegetables. It's amazing.
Oh,
Go and check
wow.
it out online. I think that would work well as a backdrop for your poem, yeah?
Good. Thanks.
Well, thank you everyone for this wonderful day, especially our features, Camille Guthrie, Hoyt Rogers, and Adam Scheffler. Thanks so much. And our next show will be coming on June 17. It's not quite up yet, but it features DeWitt Henry, Jyoti Bakani, Paul Hetherington, Caroline Reddy, Michael Sofranco, and Sandra Tyler. So join us for that. And otherwise, wishing you beautiful summer days, and just, lap it all up. Lots of love and poetry to everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Poetry,
you.
love, and sweet potato.